Hi there, and welcome to Get to Know Your Body, period. So, as you might have guessed from the title, we're going to be talking about your menstrual cycle or your period or TOM, on flow, Shark Week, whatever you might call it. Now, you might think this is just for the ladies who have a menstrual cycle or who are currently cycling, but odds are that even if you aren't, you know someone who is. So, this information could help you or some of your loved ones. So let's dive right in. Let's start with what a healthy menstrual cycle actually is. So some of this might be a little bit of review from your basic anatomy class back in high school, but some of this probably should be revised, and some of this might be new information. So a typical and healthy menstrual cycle should be anywhere between 26 to 34 days, with your period, the actual bleeding time, lasting between 3 and 7 days. You don't want to have any more bleeding than, going through about 6 pads or tampons or, Diva cups per day. And then pain. I think we've all been told at one point or another by a doctor or some healthcare provider that, yeah, it's normal. You've got cramps, take some ibuprofen, you have back pain, take some Advil, take some Tylenol, or you're moody, or you have really painful, you've got a lot of breast tenderness. Again, just take some medication, you'll be fine. It's normal. So this might be typical, but this is not normal. Not normal. So you shouldn't have any more than, occasional mild cramps, some mild breast fullness, not, pain, cysts, or any kind of cyclic lumps, no headaches or migraines, and you really shouldn't need any medications, no hot water bottles, anything like that for your cramps. And then also in terms of mood, yes, you might feel some like mild shifts in mood, energy, some shifts in your sleep, and maybe some cravings, but again, nothing that's going to affect your daily life. So one more time for the people in the back, it is not normal. It might be typical, but it's not normal to have painful periods, painful cramps, back pain, headaches, migraines, anything like that, extreme breast tenderness, not normal. So if you are experiencing those, either see another healthcare provider or don't go back to the one who told you that this is normal, is basically what I'm saying. Okay, so there are 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. There's menstruation, the follicular phase, which is during the follicular phase, ovulation, and then the luteal phase, which is kind of split into 2, but we'll go over that. I've got this really nice chart here, which you can look back on and pause the video later, looking at what's actually happening with your ovaries at this time, what's happening with your body temperature, what's happening with your uterine lining, and what's happening with your ovaries and your sex hormones. Okay, so menstruation. So that's your period. Again, we all have different names for it, but that's what it is. So that's approximately days 1 to 6 of your cycle. Really what's happening is that you're shedding your old uterine lining, and it's typically from start to finish of your period should be about 30 to 80 milliliters of blood. And what's happening at this time is that your estrogen and progesterone are at their lowest point in the cycle. You might also notice a drop in serotonin, and which is going to be causing the slight changes to your mood, maybe some lower mood. And there's also a peak in prostaglandins, which are inflammatory, which is why you might have a little bit more discomfort. Again, not pain, but some discomfort, some mild cramping, things like that. So one thing that's really important to know is what is considered heavy, because we are all in tune with what's happening to us, but we don't know what's happening with everyone else unless we talk to our friends about it all the time, which doesn't always happen. So what is considered heavy? So anything more than, your period lasting for more than 8 days. If you have to change your tampon or your pad or cup, whatever you're using, more than every 2 hours. If you're one of those people who needs a tampon plus a pad because you're bleeding through it, if you need to change your pad or tampon overnight, any kind of blood clots that are larger than the size of a quarter. Some blood clots are normal, but anything that's larger than the size of a quarter, is considered heavy. And then also, if you're experiencing any kind of fatigue, shortness of breath, low energy, or if you've actually been diagnosed with anemia, that's when you know that it's too heavy. All right, the next phase is your follicular phase, and this actually includes the menstrual phase. So it's about days 1 to 13-ish, and includes your period, includes the bleeding. And during this time, your uterine lining is proliferating again. So it's getting thicker, it's preparing for pregnancy. Your ovaries are ripening a follicle, ready to release an egg. And at that time, you've got fertile cervical mucus. So I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But really what we know what's happening about this time is estrogen is rising, your FSH is also rising, and your testosterone is on the rise. So what we're feeling typically during this time is, that estrogen, that increase in estrogen and testosterone is making us feel a bit more energized. We probably feel a little bit sexier. Maybe you're reaching for some, lower cut tops without even realizing it. Maybe you're like, wow, my boyfriend or my girlfriend or my husband or whoever is, wow, they're looking really good. That might be happening at this time. And you generally just feel more mentally clear. Okay, next phase is ovulation. So this is around days 14 to 18. It's different for everyone, like slightly. And what happens during this time is an egg is released from your ovary. And what happens is that your estrogen is at its peak, which causes a luteinizing hormone surge. And then whatever was the dominant ovarian follicle, the one that was maturing, it ruptures and the egg releases. Speaking of egg release, certain people experience something called Middleschmirtz, which is obviously a German word, and it will only occur on one side, and is actually the pain of that ovulation happening, and some people experience that. Again, it's not like menstrual cramps, which is going to be across your lower abdomen or your lower back. It's only going to be on one side, and it's not fun to feel the pain, but at least then oh, it was my right side or my left side that ovulated. So that's just something I thought that was a little bit interesting. After you ovulate, your egg is viable for about 24 hours, but sperm can survive in little nooks and crannies for about 3 to 5 days. So that means your fertile window is about 5 days before and 1 to 2 days after ovulation. So it's not just that 24 hours. You've got 5 to 6 days that are a fertile window, whether you're trying to get pregnant or you're not trying to get pregnant. And you might notice if you are tracking your basal body temperature that you have a slight elevation in temperature, which is because of the progesterone that's released from the corpus luteum after ovulation. And the corpus luteum is that the follicle that ruptured, it becomes corpus luteum. Okay, so how do you know if you're ovulating? So there's a few different ways to check. One of the ways that is pretty easy to check is if your vaginal discharge is plentiful, it's clear, and it's stretchy, so kind of like this egg white consistency. And you can see in each of these pictures, it's showing you what your cervical mucus is like throughout the stages of your menstrual cycle. And it's the perfect pH for sperm survival. And it helps when you've got this fertile cervical mucus. It's a perfect pH for sperm to stay alive. It weeds out damaged sperm as a way to protect the egg from sperm that have damaged DNA. It also transforms the sperm as they pass through the cervix, so they have more of a chance of fertilizing the waiting egg. And it's also great vaginal lubrication. So if you're not experiencing cervical mucus like this last, I know you can't really see me pointing, but it's the bottom right, at some point in your cycle, then definitely talk to your healthcare provider, especially if you're trying to get pregnant. Okay, so the luteal phase is the next phase. That's about days 14 to 28, and it's kind of split into 2 phases, which I will go over in just a few minutes. And it's the time between ovulation and menstruation where fertilization is most likely to occur. And during this time, progesterone dominates. You'll get a small estrogen peak. Testosterone is also on the rise. And then about 10 days after ovulation, that's when progesterone and estrogen start to drop. And that's when you're going to start to notice possibly some PMS symptoms, which again, I'm going to talk about in a little bit. So speaking of the two halves of your luteal phase, the first half is right after ovulation. So you've got higher energy, elevated sex drive, abundant cervical mucus, and that's because this is your body saying, okay, I want to get pregnant. This is going to help me get pregnant. I'm going to have that energy. I'm going to feel good. I'm going to feel a little bit bolder. And you're going to have that abundant cervical, like fertile mucus. Then during the second half, which is about 10 days after ovulation, when progesterone and estrogen drop, you're going to trigger PMS symptoms. Your cervical mucus is going to be like stickier, kind of tacky, pasty, and just not as good for supporting sperm and their viability. Okay, so PMS. I talked about this earlier. These are the things that are normal. So not that pain that's causing you to take Advil or Tylenol or need a hot water bottle or have to take time off of work or school, or, say no to certain occasions because you just don't feel good. These are the symptoms that are normal. So they're called liminal symptoms. And you might notice a little bit of increased sensitivity to pain, some increased inflammation, maybe some loose stools, a little like mild bloating before you get to your period, some mild pelvic heaviness. That's just because your uterine lining has been building up and building up. Mild cramping, just because that is the way that your uterus actually expels the uterine lining. That's your period. A little bit of fluid retention, a bit of belly bloating, breast fullness and sensitivity, not pain, not cysts, not extreme tenderness, and then some cravings for sugar, carbs, chocolate, red meat, things like that. And most of these symptoms are due to increase in prostaglandins. So any of the pain, any of the inflammation, that's going to be due to the prostaglandins. Some of it's due to the drop in estrogen, such as some people deal with constipation, and that's because of the drop in estrogen and the changes in estrogen and progesterone, which can lead to water and salt retention, which leads to that bloating. Okay, so cycle tracking. This is a really great way to monitor your cycles, to get to know what is normal for you. Because yes, I'm giving you times like, 26 to 34 days, but that's a range. So what's normal for you might not be normal for the next person. So finding out what's normal for you and figuring out when you ovulate is really, really important for if you want to get pregnant and if you don't want to get pregnant. And also just to know, what are my hormones doing, whether you want to get pregnant or not, just aside from that. So starting to cycle track is a really great way, really easy way to start recognizing, okay, what's going on in my body? Without doing any kind of labs or anything like that, you can figure out a lot. So there's a few different ways to do it. First way, easiest way, is just menstrual cycle charting. You literally record the first day and the last day of your period for 3 consecutive months. And that's already going to give you information about obviously your period length, your whole menstrual cycle length, and even just those 2 things will give you a lot of information. It's going to tell you when your fertile window is. So first, and I would do this along with at least one of the other ones that I'm about to talk about. Speaking of which, cervical mucus tracking. So I already showed you those fun pictures before this. And, there's a few different ways that you can do cervical mucus tracking. Not everybody's comfortable with actually inserting a clean index finger and checking, but there are other ways that you can do it. One way you can do is every day for 6 weeks, like every morning, check the color and texture of the discharge on your underwear. You don't have to touch anything. The other option is to, before you pee, wipe with a tissue, and then you can just see the texture, the color, the consistency. And then lastly, the last easiest way, and I want to make sure I make this bold, insert a clean index finger. Wash your hands first if you're going to do this method. But, you're able to check the consistency, check the color, and do this every day for 6 weeks, and it will give you a really good idea of when you're ovulating. So what are you looking for? So after your period, you're going to have little to no discharge. Mid-follicular, so that's that first phase, about days 1 to 13. So in the middle of that, you're going to start to notice that's maybe a bit thicker, can be a creamy consistency, and either whitish or yellowish. Towards the end of the follicular phase, and that's when you're going to be coming close to ovulation, you'll notice that it's starting to get thinner. And it's doing that because it's going to make it easier for sperm to get through. And then 1 to 2 days before ovulation, that's when it's abundant, it's clear, it's stretchy, it's that egg white consistency, and this is your peak fertile mucus. And then after ovulation, like right after, you're going to start to notice that it's going to get thicker, drier, and form a mucus plug. And this is because this is your body's way of protecting possible pregnancy from any bacterial invasion, any further sperm from coming in. They're like, nah, this is it. We're done. We're closed up for business. We're going to see what's happening up here. And then a couple days after ovulation, you're going to start to notice that it gets scantier, thicker, again, not hospitable for sperm. So that's what you're looking for if you do cervical mucus tracking. One of the other things that you can do is basal body temperature. Again, very easy to do, but something that's a little bit, you're going to have to do it for a little while and get used to doing it because you're going to be noticing very, very slight changes in your body temperature. So a lot of things can throw it off. So you're going to want to get a basal body thermometer. You can get just this digital one like I have here. There are tons of apps that connect to fancy thermometers, which are great if you want to get those. If you want to pay for those, that's totally fine. A lot of them work really well. But if you just want to do the basics, like write it down on your phone and have a basal body thermometer, make sure that you've got a specific basal body thermometer because those have a range of 96 to 100 degrees and will notice like 10th of degree changes. So what you want to do is take your temperature every morning as soon as you wake up. Don't get up to pee, don't have a drink of water, don't do anything else because lots of things can change your body temperature very, very slightly because you're looking for a 0.5 degree increase in your basal body temperature, which will happen about 1 to 2 days after ovulation. So if you've been checking your temperature every morning as soon as you wake up for a few months, and usually about 3 months in, you're going to have some good data, you'll start to notice when you have that 0.5 degree increase. And this lasts for about 10 days. And like I said, it starts about 1 to 2 days after ovulation. So when you've seen over the course of 3 months, oh, this is the 10 days where this happens every month, you'll know 1 to 2 days before that is when you ovulate. Okay. So why is all of this important? This is important because this whole symphony of our menstrual cycle is dependent on lots of different hormones. It's dependent on our sex hormones, of course, our estrogen, our progesterone, our luteinizing hormone, our follicle stimulating hormone, but it's also to do with our thyroid health. If that is not on point, it's going to affect your menstrual cycle. It's going to tell us about our gut health. It's going to tell us if we have any kind of, uterine or pelvic dysfunction, such as uterine fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS, or premature ovarian failure insufficiency, which is, of course, important if you are trying to get pregnant, but also important for quality of life because any of these issues is going to cause some amount of discomfort, and getting to know your specific menstrual cycle is going to be a really important step in figuring out, is everything functioning well? If it's not, let's examine it further. Okay, so this is all great information and you should start tracking your cycle so you can have more information about your own specific and individual menstrual cycle and your own hormones, but when to contact your healthcare provider. If you're having long menstrual cycles, so greater than 35 days. Now, I want to preface this with, yes, we have certain life events that are going to make changes in our cycles from time to time, whether it's travel, whether it's sickness, times of increased stress. If you're breastfeeding, if you just had a baby, there are lots of different things that can affect your cycles. But if there's no clear issue that would have affected your cycle, or if it's happening consistently for a few months, then that's when it's time to contact your healthcare provider. So if any of these things that I'm about to mention have been happening for longer than a few months, and you can't really pinpoint why any of this would have happened, then definitely contact your healthcare provider. So if they're longer than 35 days, if they're shorter than 26 days, if you skip periods like 3 or more, if you skip ovulation, now this requires knowing when you ovulate, but like I just mentioned, there are a few different ways that you can check to make sure that you are ovulating. If you are having spotting between your periods, it's just not fun. If you are having major PMS symptoms, again, like not the mild cramping, not the mild bloating, but actual pain, you need a hot water bottle, you need to take time away from work or school, you need to take medication. If you're having migraines, if you're having heavy menstrual bleeding, like more than 7 days or more than 6 pads, tampons, cups per day, or you're having large clots like greater than a quarter. If you are soaking through more than 2 pads, tampons, cups every 2 hours, or if you're having light periods, less than 3 days and less than 5 to 10 milliliters of blood flow over your entire period. All of these things are telling us that there is some sort of dysfunction going on. And it's really important that you find a healthcare provider who's going to listen to you, who's not just going to fob you off and tell you that these things are normal, because they're not. Like I said, you might have been told that they're normal, and some of these things can be typical, but they're not normal. So find a healthcare provider who will listen to you, listen to your symptoms, take them seriously, and look into further testing, whether that's through hormonal labs, looking at your thyroid health, looking at your sex hormones, making sure that they're checking your sex hormones on the right days. If you want to check your progesterone, you want to check it between days 19 to 21 or 22-ish of your cycle. So making sure that they're checking them at the right time. Checking your gut health. If you are having any of these issues as well, in conjunction with any kind of GI dysfunction, diarrhea, loose stool, bleeding, mucus in your stool, things like that. If you're having extreme pain, if you are having to change your daily activities because of your period or because of PMS, contact your healthcare provider. We are all here for you at JWP, all here to help. We can run all these labs for you. We're here to listen and to help you feel better. So let us know if you have any questions, if you want any more information, or if you're ready to start tracking and you want to know a little bit more about that, if you need some help with that, or if you already have been and you've come to realize that, yeah, there's something going on and we need to figure it out, we can help. So let us know. It was great talking to you all, and can't wait for the next one.